All right. Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of Ask Shy. Ask Shy or Ask AI, the because the domain is AskSh.ai. Anyways, this is the weekly show where I host, where I dig into things around Web3, blockchain, digital assets, cryptocurrencies, everything in the world of even AI and AI, machine learning, generative AI, of course, as well. Um, the goal overall of the show is really about getting my thoughts out, sharing some of the stories and content and things that I run into every day. I have the joy of getting to spend a lot of time on the phone with a lot of really awesome people, getting to hear their stories and what they're building. And this is the goal of that show, as well as also sharing some things that I'm building as well. So there's going to be a lot more to come in the following weeks, especially on Monday. I'm particularly excited. But there's a couple things I wanted to talk about today. And so just a quick recap of last week's show. I'll be posting a couple of either shorts or tidbits or excerpts from that content or that show. But I started off the show talking about, is crypto dead in the US, right? Did anything happen? Like is everything dead given all the SEC stuff? And that was last Friday. And then, the market was what it was this week. Um, so it's just funny how things go, right? I think there's always that question of, is crypto dead? Is Web3 dead? Is blockchain dead? Whatever. And the answer is always, I think the always answer will always be no. Um, and once again, then people are like, oh, it's not dead now. Now it's doing well. Of course, till you had a red day, and then people are like, oh, now things are bad. So the short of it is, don't hang too much on the red or green of the market. Remember, it's an immature market. The tech is not, right. So focus on the tech side that's there. The other part was, I was talking about the partner programs, right, and kind of building out partner programs, and what does it mean uh, to how do you really build visibility and validity for a partner? How do you start establishing that? I'm going to be sharing a lot more of that as time goes on next month. And so that was the main recap from last week. For this week, and from those not familiar with the show, just a quick disclaimer and recap in general. Nothing that I say or mention is any kind of is financial advice of any kind. This is all education and entertainment purposes only. Please do join the show. You have two options. You can either join the YouTube live stream and you can chat there, and I'll see your messages on the side via the YouTube link here. And then subscribe, right? Hit the bell, all that stuff. You'll get notified when I go live every week and on Mondays for the biweekly show. And then you can also hop if you want to hop backstage. My goal is also to make this show a lot more interactive as time goes on. And so if you want to hop backstage, you want to jump in the conversation there, you want to have a discussion, that's the place to do it. There'll hopefully be a lot more sessions that are not recorded and off the record, if you will, or off discussion. You can find those in my calendar link as well. And so if you go on my main page, which is just shaiperednik.com, I don't have it there. I need to fix the domain. But if you go on shaiperednik.com, there is a link there to my calendar, and you can book a one-on-one time there if you want to book a part of the sessions that I have every couple of days. You can join with those sessions and and we can jump in a conversation. Anyways, let's continue on with the show. I do my best to try to have a general outline of the things I want to cover, but for the most part, this is just kind of me going off the cuff and sharing my thoughts and my perspectives on the space and things that I run into. And so, if anything I say is wrong, please do correct me. If you want to have a deeper discussion, that's why I put my calendar link out there, because I'm happy to jump on the phone and video, whatever, and have a discussion. If you want to shoot me a message on LinkedIn or Telegram or Twitter or Session, whatever, all that stuff is on my shaiperednik.com domain under the link tree as well. So let's start off with the really digging into blockchain and supply chains. And as we get through the discussion today, this will become more apparent why this is top of mind for me. So when we look at blockchain as a technology, right? The thought is always, well, the reality is it's not new technology. Um, the Bitcoin white paper was published in, and then the from a tech side, the blockchain supply chain use cases started popping up. I think I remember sometime around like 2012, 2013, and then much more in 2014, 15, and then especially with Ethereum and sort of the smart contract stuff that was happening at that time. There was also an explosion there, but the technology underneath, I'm saying this broadly, and I'll dig into more, right? Really hasn't matured. Ex- really hasn't matured at the same pace that the rest of the use cases have, right? So if you think about like trading, right, for any kind of order books, because the fundamental layer of distributed networks and public blockchains is many times digital currency. So you have to have that underlying liquidity, and so the financial use cases have been the ones that have been most optimized for, right? So from the blockchain layer, from the development stack, of course you have NFTs, and trading art is really just trading another asset. So it's just another use case of it. Um, and then you do have chains out there for specific IoT use cases. You do have chains out there for specific um, image rendering, like render. You have ones out there for um, container use cases and general computer use cases out there. So there's a lot of different chains that are out there that are app specific chains. And while we've seen, again, blockchain specific chains, the thing I've seen over the last many years, that and why I've observed that some of these use cases haven't always taken off, right? And I'm not saying that they don't ever take off, that they do, but a lot of times the hindrance has been the challenge of getting everybody on one particular network, right? That was the original use case many times, right? The sort of value added blockchain was, we'll distribute your, there's a distributed database, a distributed ledger, and all your suppliers, all your builders can contribute to this ledger, and everybody writes to there, and everything is, honky dory and great and everything. You could do the same thing with just any other SaaS solution that sits in between and acts as a data layer, data lake or middle layer. But that was the selling point of blockchain at the time, which is valid, right? Because it's an immutable ledger and all that stuff. So the tech really focused on this idea of a private ledger, because the thought was, well, we don't want it in the public, right? We're going to put our supply chain data on there, but we'll put transactions. In some cases, it's actually going to handle the settlement layer as well. And so we don't want any of that on a public ledger, on a public chain, because it's a concern, and that's valid. And so we saw that build out. But the biggest hurdle was that getting people on board onto that chain, sort of onto the network, right? Okay, now you convince them to get on board with that. There's a business part of that, right? So that's done, right? Let's assume from a business case, they see the value in it. Um, you know, maybe there's a monetary exchange, that if they contribute to the network, they get some sort of royalties, they get some sort of privileges in the network or something like that. Right? I've seen all these kind of uh, tokenomic schemes, but they're not, they're sort of tokenomic schemes that exist outside of the network, in the sense of a business contract. And then some cases, in the case of actually a real smart contract on chain as well. So let's assume that those business agreements are done. There's still the technology side of things, right? Of like getting the development team on board, and this would be the same case even if it was a SaaS API solution of, hey, you have to start writing data to this particular service, right? Or whatever your data pipeline is today, how data moves across your enterprise, whether it's coming from SAP or your Oracle environment, whether you have uh, Excel spreadsheets throughout the business, that data is being fed into a Tableau environment or something like that. Ultimately, right, you tell the developer, hey, you have to replicate that data into this blockchain network layer, right? Again, it's the same thing as a SaaS data layer. And if it's a SaaS data layer and you're making API calls, that's at least generally not a big deal for a developer, right? They'll be like, okay, give me the documentation, right? I'll write the code against it and I'll commit my data there and whatever. But as soon as you throw in there that, oh, it's blockchain and you're writing to a ledger, most developers, either because there's a philosophical or ideological belief, on the Bitcoin and on the cryptocurrency side, and they don't like that stuff, so they don't want to touch it, and ignoring the fact that we're just talking about the tech. So that's one problem. Then you have the other builders that are like, "Oh, it's blockchain. I have no idea what's going on here." And okay, fair enough. Again, right? There is a learning curve. So then what we started seeing is a lot more of a middleware layer, if you will, and a lot of partners in the ecosystem, a lot of builders in the ecosystem do a really fantastic job of this middle layer where they're really obfuscating the challenges of the underlying blockchain network, whether it's things like blockchain block finality time, soft forking, um, any other kind of errors or failures that go in the write or the read read stages. So they do a fantastic job of obfuscating a lot of these challenges, but the challenge is that the underlying supply chain layer itself, right, is still relying on some of these fundamental basics, right? So the developer comes at it and still sees, okay, there's a supply chain, there's a technical side of things, right? There's the APIs that now make it easier for me so I can build towards that. And they go build towards that, and now we're over that hump, right? There's still the question of why hasn't it taken off? Okay, so let's assume that the network thing is not an issue. Why else? Well, that private network is kind of part of the problem, right? Because your supply chain is this closed ecosystem. What ends up happening is that you're relying on everybody else in the ecosystem to sort of build for each other. And there's many times not that desire, right? There's not that the network's not built out with that sort of culture in place and the community and all that stuff that we see in a normal, but in most public blockchains, right? You look at most, um, the top 25 layer ones or layer twos that are out there, and you look at their community, their developer relations, how they build things out. That's not what you see a lot of times on the private side as well. So, especially again in that private closed ecosystem, right? Um, so you don't have that same community building mentality, right? It's very much a developer mentality, very much Web 2 development. Like I'm building enterprise applications. If I'm building enterprise apps, why am I going to build an app for other businesses to use as well? That's just the enterprise culture, right? It's just many times the enterprise mentality that will change over time. If not, they'll get left behind. Um, and so the let's see, make sure I'm not over time on this one. So again, there's been those many challenges around blockchain supply chain adoption. Right now, there are awesome partners out there that are doing and builders out there that are doing a cool job of trying to bridge the public and private chain, and you see that with some of the CBDC work that's out there for digital asset transfers between a CBDC chain and a public chain. But again, remember, it's just a data packet, right? So that data packet going between a public and a private chain can be a supply chain and a private supply chain and a public supply chain. So I think that's going to be the really exciting part is with a lot of the tech that we're seeing in things like ZK proofs and layer twos and even layer threes in some cases, and cross chain bridging between public and private chains. We're going to see a lot more of, I think, supply chain adoption because what the manufacturers, growers, builders, whatever you want to call it, that are at that lowest level, what they'll see is, okay, by putting my data out there, by encouraging my customers to put that data out there and share that data in a secure way, right? In a way that they own that data, in a way that I can own my business data, and we can all share this data and leverage smart contracts to do that, leverage confidential computing to decrypt the data on both sides in a confidential enclave, and return an attestation that enclave was never punctured, if you will, or data never leaked out of that enclave. Like we can do this stuff. That tech is there, and there's builders building some of these components, some of these pieces, and I'm excited to see what starts happening when we build from the beginning with these architectures in place. Um, so again, things like multi-chain bridging, all that stuff is going to be awesome. So we'll see a lot of that come in. If you have any questions, please do continue to ask. I'm watching those pop up. as they pop up. Try and do my best to pivot and answer those questions. Just to keep an eye on time, about 10 minutes in. So that covers really the supply chain use cases. Again, if you look at the Hyperledger ecosystem and all the partners that build in that ecosystem, Kaleido, Casper, and a whole bunch of others, do a fantastic job of really helping their customers onboard into that space, right? So if you are a supply chain, anywhere in that supply chain, right, your grower, or anything of those, and you are looking at blockchain, those are great partners to start with because they understand that full stack, right? And they and many others, just for simplicity, mentioning those two again. Financial advice of any kind, just educational information. Um, they at least they understand, as well as many other partners and builders, that you need that hybrid world of a private chain and a public chain. There are still very valid use cases where you need a private chain. I do still ask in those cases, why can we not just use a database? Do we really need the immutability? If the case is you need the immutability, you need the what's called DAM, database access management. If you need that kind of level, well, either you build it on the database side and you build that immutability and that security, or you go the ledger route. Right, and then there's plenty of options if you're going and you just need a private chain. You don't really need all of the extra stuff on top. There's plenty of options that you can choose from. I'll give a shout out to the QLDB service team for AWS, because that is a very common use case. Okay, so the next one on the list here. Oh, the next one on the list. So I'll come back to a little more supply chain in a second. Um, so kind of moving on from that topic a little bit. Um, as I was talking about the supply chain use case, right? The whole public and private chain and sort of the mirror between them. One of the challenges that always comes up as a builder, as myself being a builder and other people building the space that are asking me, is what chain should I build for, right? What chain should I start on? Um, what should I put in my roadmap? When I'm looking at building my tech stack, what protocols and what chains do I put there? So the first thing is, right, there's a simplistic answer of you don't have to necessarily choose the chain. There are solutions out there, that obfuscate that layer, right, and create an obfuscation for you, where they will obfuscate that by like an API call, right? So you don't need to understand all the nitty gritty of interacting with that chain. You're generally writing for an EVM compatible chain, right? So it's going to be Ethereum underneath. Um, Sometimes it may be a private chain that has like a public chain bridge to it. Um, so that's the simplistic answer, right? If you don't want to go down that route yet, you're not ready to go down that path, then you have many options. Flare, Axelar come to mind. Um, Even with the Coinbase base layer 2 that they have, right? Very much a developer build mentality. Aptos and Sui kind of have that same mentality as well, that allow you to come in and build with very minimal primitives. Now, of course, when you go down the road of Aptos and Sui, then you're going down specific chains. Um, so when you're looking at the first sort of option, right? Okay, you can come in and you can sort of build in an obfuscated way. You build against those middleware, those API layers, and they maybe give you the smart contract they need. You can mint your NFTs, you can mint your token, you can build out your DAO, you can do other on-chain functionality that you want to do. That's great, and that's fine, right? That's the equivalent of using SaaS solutions or serverless solutions in a Web 2 solution, right? In a Web 2 use case today. You may be calling them via API calls, right? Like we do in the Web 2 world, or you may be calling them through a contract call and kind of following the Web 3 standards. So there's different ways to interact with those contracts, right? Your application at the application layer can also interact with those applications in different stacks. But that's the simplistic sort of answer, right? Depending on what you're trying to do, you may not need all that functionality. Again, there's plenty of lots of awesome builders in the space that have like no code solutions and like low code solutions with SDKs, third web, Crossmint, so many different awesome partners there and builders there. Um, Sorry, I keep losing my track. So that's the first side of it, right? And then as you go further down that stack and you think of, okay, I'm looking to build more, right? I want to get deeper into that stack. I want to build, I need deeper functionality. Maybe you're building a trading app. Maybe you're building a game. Maybe you're building an insurance issuance application. Maybe you're doing a decentralized identity type of solution, and you have specific requirements that you're looking for. Well, based on those requirements, you could then choose a chain. Well, the general answer to what chain is, you look at EVM compatible chains. You could start certainly with a non-EVM compatible chain, Algorand, Cardano. There's plenty of other ones that are in there. Um, but the question is, you already have a steep learning curve because you're introducing a blockchain solution in there. You're already coming in at that low level. Do you really want to come in to a world where we're still sort of building out right now? There may be viable use cases where you might say, you know what, we want to build with that ecosystem, right? That's the kind of ecosystem that we want to build at. We're looking for that scrappy architecture. We're looking for that building mentality of sort of the LTS, long-term standards building, that you see in Cardano, right? Maybe you're looking for those specific functionalities or those features in the ecosystem, in the ethos of the team. That's fine. Then you build with those non-EVM chains, right? But if you don't have that, I guess, preclusivity, right? Like you're not coming into it with that bias already, and you're just looking at building a blockchain solution, right? You're looking at obfuscating a lot of that messy blockchain stuff from your users, and maybe you're just trying to do like a marketplace, an NFT marketplace or something, or that insurance issuance app, and your users don't need to care about the underlying layer. So in that case, then again, if it's not the first option, right? Then an EVM compatible chain. That means an Ethereum virtual machine compatible chain. So Ethereum is one option. Avalanche, Phantom, Solana, well, not Solana, Near, and there's a whole bunch of other ones that are EVM compatible. Now with Solana, the catch is that while it's not EVM compatible, there are EVM side chains on top of Solana that make it kind of where you can operate EVM-like functionality in the Solana world. Again, this stuff gets pretty convoluted, but the short of it answer, again, the way to think about it is go the simple route of obfuscating the things that you don't need to worry about. Then go the route of, okay, do I need, you know, is there some ethos in me that I want to go the route of the non-EVM world? If not, then you go the route of the EVM world, right? And then, okay, so now you're looking at the EVM world only, right? You're looking at the Ethereum and all the other chains that are compatible. If you're looking for performance, the de facto answer isn't anymore Ethereum and a layer two. There are plenty of layer ones that more than achieve the performance that you think you need, and can achieve it with some hybrid architectures, right? Where you talk about subnets or hypernets in Avalanche, you talk about Polygon supernets, you talk about some of the layer three architectures in like Arbitrum as an example. And so a lot of these architectures will meet the requirements that you're looking for if it's performance that you're after, right? If it's low cost of on-chain transactions, that's a very tricky one, right? Because if you're looking at it today compared to the US dollar, okay, that's fine, right? Your underlying currency is the US dollar, and you're comparing all the chains to that US dollar. And so Solana may look very appetizing because it's, fractions and fractions and fractions of a penny, whereas an Ethereum transaction is not. And when you're doing millions of transactions because you're an IoT application, or you're a real money gaming application, or you're an insurance issuance application, an insurance application is very complex. You have a lot of contract calls in there. You maybe don't want to shoulder that financial burden on the Ethereum network, right? And so the argument, the question, I guess, then more is there a reason why you're looking at the Ethereum world? Let's assume for a second that you're not an Ethereum maxi of just like Ethereum is the only thing in the world and I'm not building it for anything else. Maybe you look at Ethereum, and this is very common, as a liquidity, right? You look at it and say, okay, from a money wise, the most money is in the Ethereum ecosystem. So if I'm deploying a marketplace, if I'm doing anything like that, I want it to be where the money's at, right? And that makes sense. Now, remember, as chains are improving, that money can move around really easily, right? So to say one chain has a higher liquidity of something like BTC because there's wrapped BTC on that chain, it is silly, right? Unless that's locked in a particular protocol, that wrapped BTC can fly out of that chain any moment to any other chain. That's the purpose of the technology. Again, if it's not locked in some sort of contract or something like that. So if the liquidity is the argument, and you're fairly strong on that, liquidity is right, similar to like if you're building in a Web 2 world, right? You maybe might come to the US or the UK or some other country where you see liquidity, right? There's customers, there's paying businesses in that area, right? You see liquidity in that market, right? If you're um, a construction worker, you wouldn't necessarily always build in the middle of nowhere, right? You build where there's customers. That's the liquidity. So same thing in Ethereum, right? It's not just because of developer. It's not just developer presence, because again, there's a lot of developer presence on other chains too. It's about that liquidity. So if that's the case, and you're coming at it from that angle of I'm after the Ethereum liquidity, and that's the route I want to go, then you're looking at, okay, you're going to stay kind of in that Ethereum world. Now, we'll get to side chains in a second and multi chains, but you're going to build probably in the Ethereum world, right? You may build on a layer two because you need the improved performance and the scaling. Actually, you will most likely be building on a layer two, right? I can see maybe like an insurance settlement, right? And an application doesn't have high throughput, right? That can be on the base Ethereum layer. But for the most part, a lot of the applications that we're seeing and a lot of the on-chain usage that's moving from a traditional database to now being on-chain, right, is going to happen at layer two because the transactions are cheaper, and because the transactions are faster, finality time is faster, all that stuff. So you're going to be building that Ethereum world, right? You're probably building with a layer two. Which layer two? I don't know. I think the phrase is like Bob's your uncle. Um, there's certain layer twos that have better architectures than other ones, right? There's certain ones that are more heavily focused on the storage side and NFT side. There are certain ones that are more focused on a multi-tiered architecture, right? Layer one, two, three, and bridging between the three chains and high throughput requirements. Um, there are other ones like the base with Coinbase and stuff that are very focused on the developer ecosystem and bridging the developer and user ecosystem. So you again, you're going to go where the market that you want to go build for is. It's hard, but that's what the answer is, right? It's kind of like a developer doing research on where they want to build their shopping mall, right? They're not going to build a shopping mall in the middle of nowhere where there's no houses and like nothing in that area. That's silly, unless they've been talking to other builders and they know that there's going to be a community and all those things built in that area, right? And so it's the same thing in the blockchain Web3 ecosystem, right? We many times see people building because they foresee that momentum. It's not just about the momentum that's there. Okay, so if you are in that Ethereum world, right, for all those reasons, you still need to be thinking of a alternate layer one. I don't believe you can be heads down and only be in the Ethereum world and only be on the, say, okay, layer twos are going to handle my everything. No, the whole point is users are going to have choice, right? If a user is using a MetaMask, Rabbit, even a Phantom wallet, I think I remember right? Any of the other token wallet, like hundreds of other wallets that we have, they're not Ethereum only chains. That's the point. They're Ethereum compatible chains, chain wallets, right? So your users are going to ask for other chains. They're going to ask, why are you not running on BSC? Why are you not running on Avalanche? Why are you not running on Phantom, on Solana, on Near, on Algorand, maybe on El, Algo, other chains, whatever. Right. So you need to at least have some strategy in mind of, we are going Ethereum today, right? We're going to go layer two next year or this year. And in a year or two, we will go alternate layer two, or sorry, alternate layer one, right? Maybe that's 2 years down the road. That's fine. It's okay, because I can understand the frustration of, we don't want to build for the Ethereum community and the ecosystem there and also figure out this other layer one as well. I get that. That's fine. but you need to at least have it on your roadmap 2 years out. 3 years, fine, but you at least need to have that for one like simple reason. As an example, if you have a really good developer and your developer's building and they're actually writing Solidity code, they are going to be looking at the opcodes within Solidity, within the Ethereum ecosystem, right? So within the Ethereum code base, the Ethereum opcodes are supported. When you go look at other chains that are Ethereum compatible, not all those operational codes are available in those other chains. So you either run into a situation where you then have to upgrade the contracts, which you can't, so you're upgrading the proxy contract and doing all this silly stuff, or you're deploying a new contract and migrating people over, um, or you just end up refactoring the whole application, right? So um, the point is, at least by having that idea in mind of like, hey, we are going to probably go to another layer one in a year, in 2-3 years from now, at least the developer can keep that in mind. And if they're getting into like the weeds of Ethereum and they're picking out opcodes that are like either new or not being used as commonly in other layer ones, then at least they have that awareness of like, okay, we are taking advantage of one. Who else in that layer one ecosystem world is also building that out as well and has adopted that standard? And then they can go and at least align their roadmap there. So again, it's that clarity is important, or at least intention. Right? Have that intention on the roadmap. All right, we're getting close on time, and I want to make sure there's a limit for any kind of Q&A and stuff like that. Just a quick reminder for those that are joining the show, this is a continuation of the sort of office hours open discussion show that I held for many years at AWS when I was there, really to dig into the Web3 blockchain digital asset cryptocurrency ecosystem. It's very much an open session where I kind of just cover things that are going on the day, and I share things that the week, if you will, share things that are going on in the space, stories, things that I'm working on, and other projects that are coming up on the schedule as well. So let's go through and talk about the last thing on the list for today, and then I'll aim to wrap up in about 10-11 minutes. So I've been really fascinated recently. Well, I've been fascinated actually for a while since. I've been fascinated since not since Christmas of 2021. I think was when I started asking my brother-in-law. And I was looking at the decentralized. I was looking at the restaurant model, right? And he's a food truck owner, and he's doing this awesome stuff there. And one of the things I thought was, why do we have to have the current restaurant model that we have today? There is food trucks, right? There is pop-up kitchens, there's scrap kitchens, there's places you can go to. I've seen this like in Vegas, for example, and Austin, a lot of other places where you go to a central area and you order your food from that central kiosk, and the different sort of places in that location deliver that to you. And so again, the concept of really like decentralizing the restaurant model is already being somewhat experimented with. And so my thought was, well, why can we not extend really the flex work model that we see from like an Uber Eats and DoorDash into other areas of business? And I spent a lot of time last year in July with the Seam Fix commit session I did around decentralized identity. And what does it mean when you certify an employee that, let's say, maybe is a welder, maybe they're a grocery store, sorry, maybe they're a grocery store bagger. Oh, excuse me. Maybe they're a grocery store bagger or a welder, and they have certain qualifications that they need to use, right? Why can they not go to any store, right? Why can they not go to any location and show up there? Now, granted, there's some certain requirements that you have to have if you're going to be a specialized worker at a certain location, but in many cases, in many places around the world, there's a shortage of employees, but there's also people looking for work, but they're not really meeting together, right? And there's all these initiatives to try to change that. And my thought was, well, why can't we just extend that flex work model? I'm sure that there's people working on this idea. Again, there's pieces of this which I've already seen and have already dug into. So I'm sure that there's got to be other people thinking about the bigger picture there. But if we apply our concepts of decentralization and distribution and ultimately choice, right? How do we apply that to the restaurant model? And so I spent a lot of time really the last year and a half, and things are really coming together around that idea of breaking apart the restaurant model, of taking that apart. And so what I thought, what I wanted to cover was, how do you do that when you're looking at a new segment, a new industry, something like, sorry, taking an industry that's been there for a while, maybe, and you're looking at how does the technology revolutionize it? The answer is not where can we shove blockchain into the restaurant solution, right? I don't go talking to my brother-in-law and I'm like, hey, can I shove a POS system into your workflow because it takes crypto? Yes, it may suck on the other things, but you should use it for this, or you should use this blockchain based solution, but it's way overkill for what you do as a food truck, right? That's not the point. You look at it as the user and you say, okay, well, in the current experience, where is there opportunities for a better user experience? It doesn't mean that the current user experience like sucks, which sometimes it does, but it just means that there's opportunities to always better the user experience, right? There's always opportunities to experiment with that, and those experiments may fail, right? We've seen like the fully robot driven restaurants, which in some cultures do very well, and in other cultures they don't do well at all. It doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that the idea is bad. It just means that the user, the audience, is not ready for it. So you can't say, oh, that tech worked there, so we're going to use it there too. The point is, what do the users want? How do you make that user experience better? And how does the tech help make that user experience better? So when we look at the decentralization and when you look at the restaurant model as an example, the goal is really to break it down, right? And you start looking at, okay, there's the restaurant layer, right? Where all the layers, where all the restaurants actually operate at. There's the supply chain layer where all the suppliers operate at. And then there's the consumer layer where all the customers are at. And when you start breaking it into those layers, you can now say, okay, well, what is in each layer, right? What business functionality is in each layer? What current technology stacks are in each layer? What personas are in each layer? And that's probably where you should be starting. When you start thinking about those personas, you start realizing, okay, there's other use cases, there's other use cases, there's other potential opportunities for the technology. There's other things that we can do with not only the, let's say, blockchain, with generative AI and machine learning alongside of it, or voice to text, or text to speech, text to voice, whatever it might be. And so that's really the mindset I think that you need to be under when you're thinking of breaking down breaking down and trying to figure out where does the technology make sense. Sorry, I think the allergies. It's better than last week. There was a spider there. Um, so looking at the restaurant model, if you continue to break that down, right, you look at the personas, the tech, and all the things there, and then you start seeing the opportunities, right? And you start, okay, well, in the current restaurant model that is today, for example, that one that has a centralized kitchen, right? What is the challenges in that model, in that system? Well, the one that people are ordering on has to be aware of what supplies are in that kitchen. Because when I go up to the kitchen today, or the restaurant today, and I say, hey, I want a burger, let's just pretend I want a burger with some fancy morel mushrooms on there or something. Maybe that's normally on the menu. But if they ran out, they'll know, and they'll say, hey, sorry, we don't have enough morel mushrooms, we don't have enough eggs today, we don't have enough whatever tomatoes, right? They can go look and see. um, if you take that ordering process and you move it to the phone, which is what we've done the last 2 years with COVID, or last like 3 years with COVID, or you move it to a centralized kiosk, right? The supply chain has to be part of that as well. And so we've seen that adoption, right, from like Clover and a whole bunch of other POS systems that are the supply chain is kind of baked into that as well. So that's kind of the challenge is at Toast. Thank you in the chat there. So that's where you start finding those opportunities, right? When you start breaking down that model and you start looking at different parts of it, and you say, okay, well, hey, we want to be more efficient. We want to offer app order, we want to offer all these things. Again, you're not just looking at a microscopic view of only app ordering. You're looking at it from an effect that can be brought across the company or across the organization, because you're leveraging the technology stack, not just like one piece to do one thing. So it's just shifting the mindset to breaking down the like breaking down the user experience, right? Breaking down the engagement model that you want the customer to have, right? Looking at it from that user experience shoes, and then working your way backwards to the tech. The tech will always be there. You don't have to shove it in from the beginning. Um, you important to be aware of what the tech can do, right? And then so you can be aware of what that tech can do, and that way, as you go across the other layers, and you start looking at, okay, well, let's look at the supply chain layer, right? What are the opportunities there? How do we build a decentralized restaurant model? Oh, wait, we have the problem with regulations, right? Somebody has to inspect the kitchen. Well, how do you have an inspector come in that is not that can operate in an autonomous way? Not in a sense it's a robot, but an inspector can come in, do the inspection, and then leave, and it doesn't require much interaction. So you start breaking down the layers, and that's when you realize the opportunity for the tech. So again, that's an area I'm working and thinking a lot about, right? The supply chain, the restaurant model. What does that look like? I will happily share more as things go along and as things get updated. And so with that, we are at the end of the show. I will remind everybody, thanks to my notes here and the chat. Um, Please don't forget to comment, subscribe, share the video, all that stuff, right? The engagement helps the channel grow and really helps the larger effort that I'm trying to build grow. You're going to see a lot more from me, not just on this channel, but a lot of other things that I'm building in this space and working with others in the space that I'm looking forward to getting started in the next couple of weeks. And I'll share that all as it's coming along and as I can share that content. So with that, I will go ahead and wrap up. If there's any questions or comments in the chat, I will leave the chat open for a minute or two to see. Other than that, my sincere apologies to anybody that this session overlaps with. I do apologize. I will figure out ways to not overlap with your sessions. If we need to move this session another day, it's fine. So if you have an overlap, if this session doesn't work for you, this time slot, let me know. Some things to expect from the future, from the next show on Monday. On Monday's show, again, I'm going to be sharing some exciting announcements. I'm going to be talking about a little bit about what I posted today about my father's philosophy of kind of being on the bleeding edge of the wave and riding the wave of technology, and how that's affected my life. And I'll talk about my journey throughout my technology life on Monday a bit more. And then next week, we will be digging into a lot more tech and sharing a lot more content. The final thing I will share for those that have hung around this long, there will be, and I'm working on an event. I will put it in the chat over here as well. And I am really keen on the idea of Web3 and sort of the machine learning, the blockchain layer, the blockchain data layer, and the presentation layer with generative AI being part of education. And I think there's a really great opportunity to help educators understand how to use the technology as a tool. Now, there's already educators doing this. There's already tech people doing this as well. And so my goal is really to bring them together, and I'm hoping to put together a session in the end of August, tentatively right now for the 24th of August at noon, that digs into Web3 as a tool in the classroom and for educators. And so visit the Crowdcast page. I'll be putting a lot more detail on there as far as the content, the agendas on there. And then I'll be looking for panelists and moderators and co-hosts and people to help me run the event. So if you're interested, please drop me a line. Again, subscribe, hit the bell, all that stuff. Follow on Twitter and LinkedIn, and we'll go from there. Thank you, everybody. Have a happy Friday. Enjoy the rest of the week, and I cannot wait to see everybody. Bye, everybody.